I'm joined now by Michael Oren, the former Israeli ambassador to the United States. Ambassador, do you believe this expanding ground operation in Gaza is the beginning of the full invasion that we've been hearing about? What exactly does expanding ground operations mean?
Well, good to be with you, Jake, and seeing that last segment about revisiting the place of the Nova massacre is very moving. I get very much choked up about it, and we recall why all of this is happening. We're talking about 1,400 Israelis, including 260 young people at this festival, massacred in cold blood, tortured, mutilated, beheaded, burnt. The equivalent of something like 52,000 Americans if you do it like proportionally. So get a sense of why this is happening. Logistically, tactically, this has to happen eventually. Again, I think we've talked about this earlier. We have 360,000 reservists called up. That is an immense amount of people. There are people in their 20s, their 30s, young men and women. They have left their families, they've left their jobs, now going into the third week. That's not sustainable. There is the clock going of international opinion and international pressure for a ceasefire. And understand that a ceasefire, sounds really good, a ceasefire, let's not shoot at one another. But for Israel, that means something close to death. It means that these people can never go back to their homes in the south, that Hamas wins, gets literally away with murder, but mass murder. We can't restore our deterrence power. So the message is going to go out to our enemies, whether Hezbollah in the north, Iran to the east, that we're fair game. We're not going to defend ourselves. The international community is going to prevent us from defending ourselves. So there's that clock spinning as well.
I understand. Yeah, I get the arguments for the ground operation. I'm just trying to translate what the IDF said when they said they're expanding operations. I'm just trying to understand, does that mean ground operations have begun?
Well, ground operations have begun. The question is whether it's all the ground operations have begun. And I don't think the IDF is in the practice of sort of broadcasting its intentions to Hamas. Remember, we're going into a war here. And so it could be establishing a bridgehead, like a beachhead from which other operations can then expand into the Gaza Strip. They've created a cordon. The Israeli Air Force has been bombing very intensely a certain area to clear out that area so that our forces can advance. We understand here, everybody in this city understands, this country understands that this operation is going to cost us, that soldiers are going to go to battle and they're not going to come home. So the Israeli army has to do two things. It has to defeat Hamas and get the hostages released, but it also has to preserve as much as possible our soldiers' life. We're not going to expend them.
Are you sure that the ground operation is the best way to get the 229 hostages out?
I don't think there's a best way at all. I think there have been some negotiations with Hamas. Hamas's demands were so astronomical.
What were they?
For the best I know, it was release of all the prisoners, Hamas terrorists in Israeli jails.
How many are there?
Hundreds, maybe several thousand. It is only releasing some of the hostages, not all of the hostages, and a ceasefire. And so, almost on every single demand, it's almost impossible for Israel. And I think that our decision makers concluded that Hamas was just playing for time. And they were going to keep on releasing terrorists, hostages one at a time, getting a very high-profile sort of coverage for it and more pressure for that ceasefire. Keep in mind, it's not impossible that an Israeli ground incursion will actually increase the pressure on Hamas. Think about to release the hostages. So it's not, it's not so black and white that if we stay out, we'll have a better chance of releasing them. It could be by going in, we'll have a better chance of releasing them.
Thank you so much. Former Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Michael Oren.